I found some of my ancient Lord of the Rings hex game figures and decided that they needed a new life, so we're gonna repurpose them today and use them in my D&D world. I'm gonna show you how to take your old or odd miniatures and make them fit into your tabletop gaming needs. The basis of what we're doing today comes from the Lord of the Rings Trading Miniatures game. It's an old one that just never really took off, and I have a ton of extra of these, so I decided, you know what, let's remove them from their old bases and make them fit in the 1x1 grid system that I use for Dungeons & Dragons. When you take the base off of them, especially like the Wraiths and the Orcs, they just look like good D&D monsters and races to be used, like humans and elves, and they are about the right size, so I figured, why not use them? They're just sitting around doing nothing, and I've got extras of each of them, so let's make this happen. Let's turn them into things for D&D. Now, I say Dungeons & Dragons because that's what I play, but you can use them for any tabletop gaming. You just change the sizes of the bases. I'm using E6000 transparent glue and 1-inch diameter clear acrylic bases. I got this idea from TheDMsCraft, and I'll put his link up in the corner of the video. You also want to get some shears or little mini plastic cutters and a extremely straight knife. You want to get cuts off of the bottom of the minis as flat as possible. I just went out and got a $3 Walmart knife for this, and it worked perfect. Now I'm going to show you the cut first, and then I'm going to zoom in. But first thing you do is take your knife and go as flat to the bottom of the feet of the characters as possible, and do almost a sawing motion so you get really clean cuts, and your figure will eventually just come right off, especially if they're soft plastics like the figures that I was using. But this is where the shears come in, because you don't always get a perfect cut. There's little extra bits of green on this figure, so I take the shears and just kind of go around it so you can't see those anymore, and bam! Figure's good to go. So we're going to zoom in, and I'm going to show you one on Gimli, who can just be a axe-throwing dwarf in my D&D game. So I'm going to cut, again, right as flat as I can to the feet. You can see here when I pull it apart, I basically got all the way down to the plastic. Watch out for your fingers, because they will fall off if you're not careful, and boom, you've got a perfectly well-painted mini, because it comes from another cheaper game than a unpainted D&D miniature, and it might even be better than your skill at painting. When these came out, it was $17 for a box of like 10 of the figures, and they're all pre-painted. That's unheard of nowadays. After I got all my good guys separated from their hex boards, it was time to put them on my inch round acrylic bases. Like I said, you can use 2 inches if you want larger figures, or if you're using any other type of tabletop gaming besides D&D, or doing a hex map, you can find those. This was, again, maybe 25 of them on Amazon for 10 bucks. And look at that. Once it's glued on with just a super small amount of glue, I'm talking Bob Ross, 3 hairs and some air amount of glue here, which I'll show you here in just a second, it looks great. And you just kind of have to let them sit overnight, or else it's going to be a problem. Even right there, you could see I put on a little bit too much glue, so I rubbed the foot across the glue cylinder, I guess would be the word for it, or nozzle, and just try and get as little as possible, because the more that's on there, the more you'll see on the base, right? Some of them don't want to stand up just right, so I use the hex pads as little devices for them to lean on and set overnight, since there's 1 hex pad for every single one that I cut off, so it's really useful. And once they're glued on there, they're good to go. You can use this same technique for Heroclix figures, or really any small plastic figure. I've done the same for Pokemon figures for the Pokemon tabletop RPG that exists. I really like how they turned out, and I like using things that aren't just straight out of the D&D fantasy world, right? Because then it creates my own world. So now I've got a whole horde of good guys and bad guys that would have otherwise just sat in my closet. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want to see some more builds in the future. I just didn't want to leave you guys in a content drought for too terribly long. So have a great day.